unserer seriösen Arbeit immer weiter nach unten treibt. Das kann uns nicht gefallen. Insofern bin ich sehr gespannt auf die nächste Diskussionsrunde und gebe das Wort an Christian Mier, den Leiter der Sektion Reporter ohne Grenzen in Deutschland. Bis nachher.
Ja, vielen Dank, Hendrik. Willkommen hier zu diesem Podium, wie beeinflusst Desinformation die Arbeit von Medienunternehmen. Wir wollen heute nicht bei diesem Podium darüber sprechen, was ist eigentlich Desinformation als solches. Manche sagen ja auch Fake News, der Begriff ist ja sehr umstritten, vielleicht auch einfach Falschnachrichten, weil das ist offenbar ein Phänomen ist, Desinformation, das zieht sich ja überall durch, scheint ja so zu sein. Und wir wollen uns heute versuchen zu konzentrieren darauf, wie eigentlich solche Desinformation, von wem auch immer die kommt, darüber werden wir sicherlich noch mal sprechen, hier das Mediengeschäft beeinflussen. Also sowohl wirklich das originäre Geschäft im Sinne von Zahlen, wie sich Geld verdienen lässt mit Journalismus, aber auch sozusagen übertragen, dass das journalistische Geschäft, der journalistische Wettbewerb. Hier in der Region wird ja auch das Phänomen Desinformation ganz oft mit Blick auf Russland diskutiert, aber wir werden, denke ich, gleich nicht nur sozusagen das Thema diskutieren mit Blick auf Russland. Wir wollen heute darüber sprechen, was hat sich für Erlösquellen, für Geschäftsmodelle durch moderne Desinformationskampagnen verändert, wie muss man in einem guten Redaktionsmanagement auch darauf reagieren, also welche Prozesse muss man vielleicht auch umstellen und wie, glaube ich, und das ist, glaube ich, auch ein ganz wichtiger Punkt, wo wir im Vorgespräch auch noch mal drüber gesprochen hatten, wie verändert sich der journalistische Wettbewerb, wenn man gegen Medien antreten muss, deren Geschäftsmodell die Verbreitung von falschen Nachrichten ist. Das sind einige der Fragen, die wir hier mit einem interessanten Podium diskutieren wollen. Wir fangen so an, dass wir erst mit einer Einführungsrede von Eric Chamberlain starten, der Oberstleutnant beim NATO-Stratcom in Lettland ist. NATO-Stratcom ist eine Einrichtung, die er gleich präsentieren wird. Ist eigentlich nicht nur eine Einrichtung der NATO, wie ich jetzt vorhin gelernt habe im Vorgespräch, sondern NATO-Stratcom ist in Lettland angesiedelt. Dort sind aber auch Nicht-NATO-Länder wie Finnland dabei und die sich ganz gezielt mit Desinformationskampagnen und der Aufklärung darüber beschäftigen. Und er beschäftigt sich dort natürlich auch mit, wie Militär darauf reagieren und Sicherheitspolitik. Und ich würde Sie bitten, Eric, gleich mit einer kleinen Einführung zu starten. Und danach würden wir versuchen, gleich in eine hoffentlich muntere Diskussion zu kommen mit sehr unterschiedlichen Perspektiven. Einmal mit Oksana Schelsicheva neben mir, die Journalistin und Menschenrechtsverteidigerin ist, die sich als Journalistin im Nordkaukasus und aktuell aber auch ganz viel mit dem Desinformation in der Ukraine, das ja ein Hauptschauplatz fast von Desinformationskampagnen ist, heute beschäftigt und diese Sicht hat und gleichzeitig im Exil in Finnland lebt und dort auch sicherlich sehr stark mit dem Thema zu tun hat. Dann ist interessant noch ganz links Marco Gombacci, Redakteur beim italienischen Online-Magazin The European Post und Autor der Tageszeitung Il Giornale Oggi della Guerra. Und wir hatten gestern schon ein kurzes Vorgespräch, auch so über die Frage Russland. Und er meint, er ist auch ein erfahrener Kriegsreporter. Und in Kriegsgebieten wie Syrien war seine kurze Aussage, und da werden wir sicherlich gleich zurückkommen, so, da macht jeder irgendwie Desinformation und das unterscheidet sich am Ende auch nicht so viel. Und das ist, glaube ich, ein guter Blick für die Diskussion. Alina Radu ist noch hier mit uns auf dem Podium. Sie ist investigative Journalistin und Direktorin der unabhängigen Zeitung Diarul de Garda und hat sich dort immer wieder mit Menschen- und Organschmuggel beschäftigt, aber als Direktorin einer unabhängigen Zeitung, das ist, glaube ich, wichtig hier und deswegen ist es gut, dass sie hier auf dem Podium ist, ist es auch gerade wichtig, muss sie sich ja auch am Markt behaupten mit einer Zeitung und auch in einem Umfeld von Desinformation. Und auf die Perspektiven bin ich auch gespannt. Und genauso Soran Sekulic, der Gründer und Chefredakteur von der Nachrichtenagentur Fonet in Belgrad ist. Das ist eine der bekanntesten unabhängigen Nachrichtenagenturen in Serbien, die viele Skandale aufgedeckt haben. Und auch Zoran muss sich als Gründer und ja, Geschäftsmann auch einer Nachrichtenagentur auch in einem Umfeld wie Serbien bewegen, in einem journalistischen Markt, wo viel Desinformation stattfindet. Und Eric, ich würde Sie bitten, jetzt erstmal so in knapp 10 Minuten einen kurzen Überblick, einen Einblick in das Thema zu geben, wie NATO Stratcom mit den Desinformationskampagnen umgeht und was macht überhaupt NATO Stratcom. Danke sehr.
Good day. Thank you for the organizers for inviting me for this panel today. Actually, it's kind of a bit hard to come after such great news professionals that we had on the panel before, because they touch a lot of points that I'm going to maybe summarize all together. So it's actually good for me to be here, because in Latvia it's starting to be cold and dark, and even for a Canadian living in Latvia, it's good to get out of there and come here for some sun and nice weather. So every day in our work at the NATO Strategic Communication Center of Excellence, we see how disinformation is used to trick populations around the world. It's making it more and more difficult for people to make sense of what is happening around them. State actors like Russia or Iran, or extremists on the left and the right, use disinformation to interfere in how people make decisions, how they pick their leaders, and how they assume their rights to make democracy alive. Furthermore, disinformation is a challenge for news professionals. It's affecting the way you work and your ability to make a living by informing people. We could say that there was always some form of disinformation, but certainly more so since the Russians invented the word in the 1920s. But more importantly, there's always been a thirst for truth and a need for information. With the web and the social media, information is now consumed in new ways. It creates an online breeding ground for disinformation, but the need for reliable information still exists. To be able to deal with disinformation, it's important to be alert. It's important to recognize it, to know how it works. And it's not easy. There's no superpower that will allow you to know where disinformation is. And there's no superpower that will allow you to do this. You have to work. By the way, don't tell your kids, but Superman is fake news, right? We all came across content that made us doubt of its veracity. Disinformation is common, and it comes in various shapes. However, we must remind ourselves that disinformation is a tool. It's a tool. It's used by foreign actors to weaken their opponents. Disinformation can be misleading content using factual information to give a false impression. For example, here on the slide, so the information that's there is all factual. It was used by a senator in the Philippines to talk about how well the government is doing the war against drugs and violence. But when you look at this slide, and maybe you don't see it from where you are, but the first 6 columns are annual reports of numbers. And then the last 2 columns go into 6 months and 1 month. So the scale is not the same. So all the information is accurate. It's all real information, but it's put together in a misleading way. So basically, if you look at this, you think that the number of homicides or violence went down very drastically since they started doing their counter-violence approach, basically. But in reality, it's misleading by numbers. But this was used by a representative of the government supporting the government in place right now. It can also be real videos about past events, but used in the wrong context at a different time. So basically here, the video is actually completely factual. But what happens is it's being reused at a different time with something that has nothing to do with it. So the real video is the one on the right. It was published in 2012, and it was related to strikes in Spain. And when you look at the left one, it's actually reusing the same video to try to persuade people that the Spanish government is trying to prevent people from going to vote regarding the Catalan issue there. So it's exactly like it's real information. It's a real video, but it's just used at the wrong time in the wrong context. But just by doing this, you're creating a false impression. So this information is not always created from fake content, but it can also be. So, we have another example here of manipulated content. So that's something that happened not too long ago in the Baltics. So what happened is one of the websites, Baltic Course, was actually hijacked or basically hacked. And they put in there information that would have come from a news agency called Delphi. And basically the picture that you see on the left, you see the policeman there, and there was an accident with NATO forces in the Baltic. But in front and in the back of the vehicle, you can see that there was a bicycle added and a young boy, the body of a young boy in front of it. The actual picture actually was never taken. It's all fabricated. If you look on the right side, you see actually where the accident happened. There was no little boy, and it was not actually on the bridge. So it's a made-up news article, and Delphi themselves had to actually come out and explain that this was not their news agency who produced that. It was actually fake news that was sent in the social media, but actually attacked the reputation of Delphi and the Baltic Course. So it's very serious. We also have here fabricated content. So this news never existed. Actually, the lady from Kiev just talked about it a few minutes ago, about crucifying babies in the east of Ukraine. So this news was actually, they made actually a program about it. For many minutes, they talked about the fact that babies were being crucified in eastern Ukraine. But the reality is that it never happened. And actually, the lady that was actually the main witness there is a very famous lady in the eastern Ukraine, in the Donetsk area. She's married with some of the militant there, and she can be any day of the week a journalist or a victim or activist, whatever you want. So basically, this is actually full fabricated content that was used by Russian television. This information also connects with emotions and personal preferences. So this is a very good example of calling to emotions. It is targeted and distributed to groups that are selected in advance to achieve a specific goals. It often uses slightly distorted facts to make it more believable and difficult to refute or detect. And this is the most nasty one. This information spreads and is repeated in many ways. It goes from public platforms to direct messaging apps where it's harder to track. Eventually, autocrats, sponsored organizations, state-controlled media, conspiracists, and trolls will amplify it, reuse it, make their own versions. And all this can be done in a synchronized manner. For example, here we had a piece of news that came out as the Americans were getting into Poland. And basically it was accusing the US of sending 3,000 tanks on the border of Poland and Russia, well, Belarus. 3,000 tanks, just so you can put that in perspective, would be about 1/5 of the inventory of the United States. So it will never happen. They wouldn't send 3,000 tanks. It was about 200 tanks that were sent. But this piece of news was produced by something called Donny News. You probably don't know it. It doesn't matter. But then when you look at it, it was taken by a network of blogs and other little news agencies that they call themselves on the web, and then redistributed until it got to something called Global Research. That's a so-called think tank. It's actually in my country. That actually tried to do political stuff, but once it got there, then it was taken by mainstream media, and then it got into the media overall. But they use NGOs like this, non-government organizations, to actually spread false information and give the assumption or the perspective that it's so-called experts that are actually proliferating the news, but it's not. A high amount of disinformation and repetition are key to create the impression that we all agree on the same false reality. Whether it's by questioning the truth or wasting the truth, it wants to make anything and everything seems plausible. It wants to create confusion by a flood of false information so the truth cannot be found. They don't actually want to be the one that's right. They don't want to be on the top and be the one being looked at, okay, they're telling me the truth. They don't care. They just want to waste it, point. They don't want it to be found. So they will do whatever it's needed to do that. For example, this was related to the famous crash that happened in Ukraine. So just for this piece of news, you had on Russian television the fact that it was a Ukrainian fighter jets, actually with a picture to help. I don't know if you're convinced by the picture, but they did use that. Then they used the fact that it was actually trying to target the Russian plane, and then that it was separatists that were actually using missiles that were stolen from Russia to do it. And then it went so on until we learned the fact that it was actually Russian units that were operating in the eastern Ukraine. But they went as far as saying it's the US that did it, it's Israel to actually hide something else they were doing. It was just a crash, it's terrorists that did it. It's actually the MH370, which was the other plane that crashed, that actually, they just found it. It was actually over Ukraine. So they actually used anything to confuse the truth. Disinformation also creates doubt to make people refute information or accept a new reality. By using emotional topics, it will try to magnify them to divide society. It will try to exploit or invent divisions between social groups, ethnicities, political parties, all that to attack democracy. As I speak, you may be thinking about how disinformation is affecting the news media, and it's a great concern. Not only because of the quality of the news, but also because it may affect the business model and the distribution of information by the media. Disinformation is already using headlines that look like real news, while fact, entertainment, humor, advertising are becoming blurred. This confusion also allows for disinformation. Over time, it helps build a general doubt about the authenticity of news content and the mistrust of public toward any information. Now, with the fast spread of disinformation online, the news media struggles to provide counterbalance. There's also a growing risk of error in live news and instant reporting. With less and less human resources to generate factual reporting and to verify sources and information, the news media has a diminished ability to be a watchdog of information and to call for accountability. And in a democracy, this is a serious matter. Over time, governments may put in place regulations to protect populations against disinformation. By trying to fix one problem online, these rules will also affect the media and restrict their freedom of press. But what is also quite troubling is how state actors and malign groups are using disinformation to target news professionals, journalists, and even their sources and their consumers. So it's not only about the media and the journalists, it's also the sources, the people that provide you the information, and the people that consume the information. Think of social media comments leading to public shaming, intimidation, and threats. From fake articles to fake images, we're now moving to fake websites, fake videos, and deep fake videos. So if you don't know what deep fake videos is, you can search it on the internet, but basically now they're able to make Mr. Obama, for example, the former president, say anything you want, and you're barely able to tell if it's true. Not too long ago, I had one of my colleagues at the center who went to a conference where it was explained that they think that within the next 6 months to 1 year, somebody is going to try to use deep fake videos to generate a crisis somewhere. So it's advancing at a very rapid pace, and we are less and less able to tell the difference between what is fake and not. So the quality and the technology in disinformation products is making it harder to differentiate real and fabricated content. Automation or robot trolling and artificial intelligence will only make it more difficult as time goes by. For example, here we have a project at the NATO Stratcom Center of Excellence that's dealing with robot trolling, mainly related to Russia and the Baltic states. Basically, robot trolling is the same as trolls, but it's automated. So basically, it's machines or computers that are generating repeated content that one person will implement at the beginning or start the process with. Sometimes it's automatically generated. So for example, here you have the sisters, we call them Tatiana, or friends there. Actually, Tatiana is now deceased. Don't worry, she wasn't real, she was a robot. But basically, if you look at them, even from the visual point of view, you see that they're exactly broadcasting the same thing at the same time in the same message. So what they're using that for is to either amplify or repeat a message, but also gang up. You know, gangs, basically what they do, they swarm. They go together after something and they try to kill it and make it irrelevant. So that's also what they do. They try to swarm and neutralize issues, distract by bringing other topics that have nothing to do with the topics that's being discussed, and discredit and create panic. So this was alluded by other people that came up front today, but it's a very serious matter. And what's more serious is that we were able to track them on Facebook, for example, and Twitter, but now they're moving to direct messaging app, and it's becoming very, very difficult to be able to create patterns of what they're trying to achieve with that. So we tend to think that disinformation is new, but it's not. We must admit that it will probably stay and continue to affect us. However, the news media still has a crucial role to inform the public and to prevent disinformation from entering the day-to-day news. This can start by checking content obtained through fake news wires or free news wires before publishing it. Check your sources. While the news media is adapting to the online reality and the social media, it has the opportunity to embrace this new way of informing. It can create a genuine exchange of reliable information and truly engage directly with the public. Technologies will find ways to filter some of the disinformation online, but investigative journalism and your professional standards are still paramount to inform. They can help neutralize disinformation. Thank you.
Danke, Eric, für diese Einführung und auch für die sicherlich sehr guten und schönen Beispiele. Viele hier in der Region haben ja, denke ich, mit vielen ähnlichen Erfahrungen zu tun. Ich habe, bevor wir hier in die Diskussion einsteigen, 2, 3 ganz direkte Nachfragen nochmal. Eric, Sie haben ja gesagt, aus der Sicht von NATO Stratcom, dass das Phänomen von Desinformation eigentlich nichts Neues sei. Der Begriff ist in den 20er Jahren schon von Sowjets geprägt worden und NATO Stratcom gibt es ja noch nicht so lange als eine Einrichtung. Warum hat sich die NATO dann aber eigentlich erst jetzt entschieden, und nicht jetzt, aber doch vor relativ kurzer Zeit, im Zeitraum von Jahren, NATO Stratcom einzurichten? Das ist eine erste Nachfrage. Wenn es das schon so lange gibt, Desinformation.
Well, there we go. Okay. So I thought my voice was good enough, but no, I'm joking. Okay. Yeah, translators too. Thank you. So the NATO Strategic Communication Center of Excellence was actually created because the alliance, basically NATO, is trying to understand how they can better communicate in line with the different countries that are in NATO and make sure that the diplomatic aspect and the policies basically are reflected in our communication. So this is why the center was created. So we're trying to find a way to better communicate with people because in time of crisis, when you get to a war or when your countries are under pressure from an enemy, you want to be able to communicate with people and make sure that you keep people informed and calm because that's part of winning a conflict. So this is why they created the center. So this information become a sub aspect of this because obviously if you're trying to communicate to people what's happening in a democracy and you want to make sure that they are informed and understand what's happening and how you're dealing about it, well, this information will prevent you from doing this. So this is why we're trying to understand this process a little bit better because by understanding we can fight it and make sure that communication remains open with the public and our citizens in the alliance.
Und die Arbeit von NATO Stratcom soll das ein Service sein in erster Linie für Sicherheitspolitiker, für die NATO-Verteidigungspolitiker oder auch für die allgemeine Öffentlichkeit und auch für Journalisten, um das zu verstehen?
I'm not sure I got to the last part of it.
Ist die Arbeit von Stratcom, das Sammeln, das Dokumentieren von solchen Beispielen, ist das ein Service auch für Journalisten, für die allgemeine Öffentlichkeit, oder ist das eigentlich nur etwas, ein Angebot für Sicherheitspolitik, Verteidigungspolitik, um analysieren zu können, wie man politisch damit umgeht?
Actually, everything we produce at the center can be found on our website, so it's all public sources. The real reason why we're doing it is to better explore the phenomenon of strategic communication and how we through the media and through different manners, how we communicate with public. But all our research is available from our website. Obviously, the nations, actually we are called NATO, but we are accredited by NATO. So we are a center of excellence that is based in Latvia. It's a national project, but NATO is accrediting us. But we have also in the center countries that are not part of NATO. For example, Finland and Sweden are part of the center. There's about 11 countries that are funding the center. And they want to better understand how disinformation and how communication is required to make sure that they communicate with their citizens. So, but all our research is available for anybody that wants to read it on our website. And the robot trolling, for example, the one that's looking at how robots are used to amplify messaging, this is updated every 3 months by our team using artificial intelligence, and you can see the results every 3 months. For example, when we started the project, you would be surprised to know that when you look at the discussion about NATO and the Baltic states, 70% of the discussion on Twitter in Russian was polluted by bots. So that means it wasn't even real people discussing the subject.
Und noch eine letzte Nachfrage. Sie haben ja gesagt, sozusagen die meisten Auftraggeber eigentlich von Desinformationskampagnen sind staatliche Auftraggeber. Und Sie haben auch gesagt, das verwundert ja nicht, dass sozusagen Desinformationskampagnen, die auch die Geschäftsmodelle, um zu dem Thema des Panels zu kommen, beeinflussen können, angreifen können. Und da aus der Erfahrung mit dem Überblick bei der Arbeit bei NATO Stratcom hätte ich noch eine Nachfrage. Ist die Schädigung von journalistischen Geschäftsmodellen durch Desinformationskampagnen eher ein Kollateralschaden, der sozusagen bewusst in Kauf genommen wird durch Desinformationskampagnen, oder ist das Hauptziel der meisten Desinformationskampagnen, die Sie beobachten, die Sie dokumentieren, in erster Linie sozusagen das Stören von Mediendiskursen, das Stören von gesellschaftlichen Diskursen, und dann führt das sozusagen in der Folge auch dazu, dass Geschäftsmodelle verunsichert werden und beschädigt werden? Also ist das Hauptziel sozusagen nur Diskurse zu stören oder auch wirklich Geschäftsmodelle zu stören und vielleicht auch anzugreifen?
Well, overall, from the research we're doing, it's attacking the overall democracy, basically the democratic aspects of our society. So our rights, our freedom to express ourselves, and also our ability to question, the powers in place. So the media, I don't think, is a secondary effect. They also attack the media directly to make sure that they kill those voices, like it was stated by many, and maybe my colleagues here on the panel can also attest to that better than me, but make sure that they kill those voices that are asking for accountability. And also we looked at this the problem of disinformation not only from a state aspect, but also we have the same problem with Daesh, for example, and ISIS. They recruited people, they actually tried to advance their purpose in Syria and Iraq by using disinformation, and it was the same kind of models. You also have extremists on the left and on the right that are profiting from this and trying to use this information to topple governments or to skew the agendas of the citizens in their countries. So there's many facets to it, but for sure the media is one of the voices that they want to kill, for sure.
Marco, Sie sind ein erfahrener Kriegsreporter. Sie waren in vielen Kriegen, vor allen Dingen im Nahen Osten als Reporter, haben dort berichtet, in Syrien, im Irak. Sie waren als Reporter in Raqqa, der damaligen Hauptstadt des Islamischen Staats, als es noch die Hauptstadt des sogenannten Islamischen Staats war. Und Sie haben mir im Vorgespräch, wie vorhin schon erwähnt, gesagt, so Desinformationen habe ich eigentlich immer erlebt. In Kriegen wie dort im Nahen Osten betreibt jeder Desinformation. Erleben Sie, reagierend auf das, was Eric uns gerade erzählt hat, dass gerade westliche Akteure wie die NATO in solchen Konflikten wie dort im Nahen Osten überfordert sind von solchen Desinformationskampagnen und können deshalb verstehen, dass es eine solche Einrichtung jetzt gibt? Und wenn ja, hat das Einfluss auf Ihre Arbeit?
Thank you, Christian, and thank you, Oliver, because yesterday in the first panel, Oliver touched this topic, because when he says that one of the most important things for the journalism, the freedom movement of a journalist, he said something crucial, and I would like to underline that the freedom movement for journalists should be guaranteed, should be granted also in the war zone. When I went to Syria, I was in the north of Syria, in the Kurds-controlled area. And it was easier to go there as a journalist, because I had to pass via the Kurdistan-Iraqi border. But in the regime area controlled zone, controlled by the Damascus regime, it's almost impossible for a journalist going there, especially in 2014, in 2015, at the beginning of the war. And the lack of journalism, what happened with having no independent journalism in Syria? That on one side, there were the state-controlled media by Damascus, by Assad. And on the other side, the rebels started to use the social media, started to use Twitter, YouTube, Live Leak. And the Western media, that they didn't have any reporter on the ground, start to take the social media as a reliable source. And this is something that was counterproductive, because a lot of times we have seen that also some rebels, some civic actors that were using the social media were doing kind of propaganda pro-rebels, or even worse sometimes, pro-jihadist group. And a lot of people in the Western media decided to trust this civil activism. But the civil journalism is not professional journalism. The professional journalism should be independent and should be professional. The civil journalism, of course, we have to know before who are these activists who are tweeting, who are putting everything on the social media. I can quote two examples. BBC. So not the European Post, the media that I founded, but I mean one of the main and the most important media in the world, in 2014 took a picture of children death, so something very sensible, and said, look, this is Assad killing the children. But the picture was took in 2003 by an Italian photographer in Iraq. And the picture became viral in the social media before through this activism. Another case is one of the authors of the so-called revolution hymn anthem. It's very famous in Syria. I cannot pronounce the name, so I'm not even trying to do it. At one moment, there was the news that it was dead. And after 1 year, we discovered that he was alive. But his death was used by some activists to promote or sensibilize the Western audience on certain issues. And what I'm saying is that, especially when they opened the door for the journalism, even Damascus, in Aleppo, or in the north of Syria, the journalism, what I saw with my eyes to arrive to your answer, was that the majority of journalism, the journalists wanted to arrive first to publish the news. We are living in the Twitter world, where 140 characters immediately can change the exit of the war, the result of a war. And everyone was taking the picture and saying, this happened in this moment without verifying the sources, without checking what really happened, without asking to more than one people what was going on. And to defeat this kind of fake news, especially in the war area, in the war zone, it's up to us, it's up to the journalists to start to come back to what the war reporters were doing years ago. I remember two of the most famous Italian war reporters that are from Trieste, like me, Fausto Biloslavo and Gianni Michalesin. They were telling me that in the 80s they were passing months with the Taliban in the mountain of Afghanistan. Can you imagine how much they thought, they analyzed the situation before publishing something? Now I'm asked by the newspaper, the media, to send the reportage, the entire video of the entire day in the evening. How much time do I have to analyze and to reflect about what I've seen?
Eine Nachfrage habe ich noch sozusagen. Sie haben ja darauf hingewiesen, die Unmittelbarkeit von solchen Videos von Bürgerjournalisten dort in der Kriegsregion. Und gleichzeitig haben Sie darauf hingewiesen, wie Ihre Arbeit als Korrespondent vor Ort ist. Hat sich die Zusammenarbeit mit Ihren Heimatredaktionen auch dadurch verändert, in dem Sinn, dass Sie sich vielleicht anders rechtfertigen müssen, wenn Redaktionen die unmittelbaren Videos sofort auf den Tisch bekommen und Sie vielleicht auch Fragen gestellt bekommen, warum haben Sie das nicht? Oder Sie vielleicht Redaktionen mehr glauben, den Videos mehr Glauben schenken als dem, was Sie vor Ort sehen. Hat sich da auch was verändert im Sinne von die Rolle des Korrespondenten, hat die sich verändert? Im Verhältnis zur Redaktion durch den Einfluss von solchen Dingen? Also das ist ja eine Frage bezogen auf das Redaktionsmanagement.
Yes, indeed, because if you see some media outlets that are just writing the shocking title to write the news and to have more audience or more click, the famous clickbait title, and all the other media, they are competing. It's a free market in the media, so a lot of times the newsroom are asking to the war reporter to push at the extreme level the journalists in the area. And the journalists at the moment, we live a very competitive moment even there. So we are human beings, and sometimes a lot of us, including me sometimes, I'm not the perfect guy in the world. My mom thinks that I am, but I'm not. But it's kind of that we are provoked by sometimes by other titles, and to respond to other titles, some journalist wants to raise the tension, so if you see some fake news, and instead of writing a long article explaining of analyzing the situation, sometimes you want to make a fake news on the other side, and this is a fake news against fake news, but there is no truth in both situations.
Oksana, Sie haben als Journalistin für Novaya Gazeta, aber sehr viel auch im Nordkaukasus gearbeitet und arbeiten jetzt als Journalistin und Menschenrechtsaktivistin sehr. No translation? Should I switch to English as well? For me, it's no problem. If you. So, should I wait for the German or the? Ja, funktioniert es wieder? Gut. Oksana, Sie haben als Journalistin viel im Nordkaukasus gearbeitet für Novaya Gazeta und arbeiten jetzt auch viel in der Ukraine zu Menschenrechtsverletzungen in der Ukraine und auch viel mit Desinformationskampagnen, zu Desinformationskampagnen in der Ukraine. Gerade die Konflikte im Nordkaukasus und in der Ukraine im Vergleich. Hat sich da was im Vergleich von Desinformationskampagnen, hat sich da was im Vergleich der Desinformation verändert?
Well, thank you. Actually, it's quite a challenge to speak almost right after the person who deals with the NATO, when you represent the Finnish Peace Committee. But Yes, just briefly. Yes, I worked also on the North Caucasus. I worked extensively in Chechnya, and that's the reason why I'm a political refugee in Finland. And so with regard to Ukraine and the crisis and the armed conflict as such, you know, we shouldn't make a mistake of trying to believe that propaganda in war conflicts is one-sided, or there are only bad or good guys when you deal with an armed conflict. This is never the case. So today this case was mentioned of a crucified child in Slavyansk twice. I can tell, and it was the case of the Russian propaganda. Actually, when I, for instance, heard that story, and I do follow the situation in Ukraine very closely, also because I belong to Ukraine. I was born there, so this is part of me. I can't separate my Russian self from my Ukrainian self, and I'm in Finland. So it reminded me of an encounter which I had in a refugee camp in Ingushetia during the Second Chechen War. There was a woman, a Russian woman, living together, a resident of Grozny, living together with other IDPs in Ingushetia, who told horrible stories about abuses by the Russian military against civilians in Grozny. And mind, it was a Russian resident of Grozny. And there was something really, really difficult to believe. So the level of the horror was immense. And then Chechen women who were living in the next camp, tents, they approached me and my colleague and told her, be careful with taking for granted what this poor woman tells, because she has gone mad with the suffering, because of suffering. Yes, there was part of the truth in that horror story which she was trying to tell us, but the immense of her own suffering actually was crossed out by the nightmarish images which she projected to the media. And to some extent, it refers also to the case of this woman. I'm not sure whether she is a wife of a Donetsk combatant. It's necessary to check it. But with regard to Slavyansk, I have to remind about another case, and this is also an example which I think is important to show how we are trying in Finland to combat fake news and propaganda disseminated and created by all possible sides. In May 2014, 2 journalists were killed in Slavyansk. One was my good friend from the joint work in Chechnya, a Russian dissident, human rights defender and journalist, Andrei Mironov. The other one, Italian photographer, his good friend, Andy Rocchelli. So they were killed in a shelling, and their death was attempted to be presented as kind of accidental collateral damage on journalism. But in order to find out what happened there, we came to Slavyansk, and believe me, it took us 2.5 years to establish details of the tragedy, to find witnesses, to find people with whom these 2 people worked during their stay in Slavyansk, and also then the next step which we made was very important. When we found those people, we didn't write about their story. So what we did, we brought lawyers there. Not Ukrainian lawyers, not Russian lawyers. We brought lawyers who work with the Dutch NGO, which is called Stitching Justice Initiative, and we brought them there in order to prepare the case for the European Court on Human Rights. And the level of impunity was so grotesque at that time that, can you imagine, a year and a half after the death in Slavyansk of Andy Rokelli and Andrei Mironov, we found their personal belongings in the hotel where they were renting a room. And mind, among the personal belongings which was not wanted by anybody, so the local residents of Slavyansk, they just kept it in safety. So there was SIM card with the last footage of their life. And now the case is in court in Italy. So in the beginning of December, the court resumes the hearing on the Italian citizen, who the Italian prosecutor's office, is going to sentence for being part of their murder of an Italian journalist, photographer, and human rights defender.
Danke. Alina, eine Frage. Alina, Sie sind Chefin einer unabhängigen Zeitung in Moldau, in einem Medienmarkt, der ja auch ein Feld ist, in dem verschiedene Desinformationskampagnen stattfinden. Und wir haben vorhin in dem Vortrag von Eric auch davon gehört, wie Desinformation Geschäftsmodelle angreifen kann, dass das Geldverdienen mit Medien auch erschweren kann, mit unabhängiger Information, mit unabhängigem Journalismus. Können Sie uns ein bisschen erklären, als Chefin einer unabhängigen Zeitung in Moldau, wie sozusagen das Geschäftemachen mit einer unabhängigen Zeitung in Moldau funktioniert in einem Umfeld, was sehr stark von Desinformation geprägt ist?
Thank you very much. We as investigative reporters look always where the money are, who the money owns, and who benefits from something that is wrong. And I just need your help. Who had the coffee during the coffee break? Did anybody have coffee? Yes, good. And what if you learned that the coffee was fake? That it didn't contain caffeine, but maybe wine or vodka? Will be you aware of that? Will you do something? Except the fact that you'll be happy, some of you, that there was vodka. Yes, I think all of us will do something. Journalists will write a story, will go and ask why the coffee was fake, why a product was accepted in a restaurant if it was fake. Actually, during November, the American Food Security Organization withdrew from the market 6 products. And among them, a product for dogs, food for dogs. And it was withdrawn from the market because the experts say it was not written well how much vitamin D this product had, and it might harm some dogs. So we care about the products for dogs, but why don't we care about humanity? Information is a product. Information is a service. So if we don't accept fake bread, fake food for dogs, why do we accept so much fake information? Because it's a product again. In Moldova, we tried first to follow this fake news and to understand, if there is a fake news that 30,000 Syrians are coming to Moldova today. Then what you do? You do a story trying to debunk and to explain that Moldova can't have 30,000 Syrians. Moldova, actually, nobody wants to come to Moldova, not one Syrian, not 30, not 30,000, And then the whole good quality media is like following and going after this fake news, and they do more fake news, and we do more debunking of fake news. And then we understood that this is a lost battle. Because it is easier to create a fake news than to work and to do a quality explaining why this news is fake. So one day we decided to understand exactly the connection between these stories and someone who benefits. And we found actually easy that 20 fake news web pages are connected to a politician. And these politicians control the parliament, the government, and everything in Moldova. And this politician actually benefits from it. And this politician pays to it. So then it is very clear that we should write more about this politician actually and not to follow these fake news web pages that are appearing every day. So this is actually the model we consider should fight all, to see who is interested and to try to make a law, to punish. If we punish those who bring to us fake apples or false food, let's find a way to punish those who bring to us this fake information as a fake service or as a fake product.
Aber ist das sozusagen aus der Perspektive Ihrer Zeitung, ist das ein Wettbewerb um Informationen, der dort stattfindet? Oder ist das sozusagen am Ende sozusagen journalistisch ganz einfach zu entlarven, das sind falsche Nachrichten? Stehen Sie in einem Wettbewerb mit Medien dort in Moldau, die wirklich Desinformation betreiben? Oder geht es nur darum, Social-Media-Kampagnen journalistisch zu entlarven?
Actually, if we look at the media landscape, Moldova is a specific country. We have one oligarch who controls the government, the parliament, the judicial bodies, and he controls a lot of media. Then this is the guy who controls fake information. He doesn't control the truth. But it is so hard to keep the truth working and existing in Moldova because free media are just a few. So more work on investigative reporters to work not only on money laundering, on corruption, on lack of transparency, but also we have to work with this fake news. But actually the author of everything is that. And of course, we have a lot of fake news coming from Russia. If you look at I was so jealous on Albania yesterday when it was said that there are 22 dailies. Okay, maybe daily newspapers, maybe not of, I understood, not so much critical journalism or analytical journalism, but 22 newspapers. If you look at Moldova, the newspaper with the main circulation in a kind of independent country of Moldova, you know what is the name? Komsomolskaya Pravda, a newspaper produced in Russia, written in Russia, controlled by Putin, is the biggest circulation newspaper in Moldova. Then, of course, false news from Russia circulate very free in Moldova. And also we have a lot of Russian TV channels from Moscow that are spread all over Moldova. So then the fight of small teams of independent reporters or investigative reporters is huge, and we have a huge load of work every day.
Christian, just one thing that I wanted to add, because you mentioned something to punish who is publishing fake news. But before punishing, you have to have a common definition about what is a fake news. Because having a list of good or bad journalism is not good for journalism. Okay? It's very dangerous because at one moment you can reach a level where you are put on the list of bad journalism because you are in opposition or because you don't agree with some other trade union or to the regulator of the fake news. So it's a very, very extremely delicate situation.
Sorry, if I said to punish journalists, I was mistaken, but I hope I didn't say that. I don't want to be punished journalists. I want to be punished those who pay journalists, because journalists are not stupid and they do fake news when they are well paid. So there is no stupid journalist that only sitting and doing fake journalism without well payment. We have to punish and define rules to punish those who pay journalists who make fake news. Those who, I don't say we cut their heads, I don't say we put all of them in jail, but there should be rules. As we don't accept bad apples, we should not accept bad products of any. We should not accept bad news, fake news. Thank you.
Ja?
Actually, I just would like to develop this idea. So definitely fake journalists or journalists who produce fake news. So they are, well, I hardly believe that they volunteer to do it. So, and once again, talking about situation, now we are surviving in a very fragile world. So when the notion of peace is at stake. So, and our goal, if we want to keep peace and to save our children from a new war, so we should do whatever we could not to fuel conflicts. And actually, this is the goal which I personally see in what I've been doing until now, and what I started to do as a journalist in Chechnya. I lost a lot of colleagues and friends who were killed. And I know, I can tell you that my own problems with Russia, they didn't start with my role in Chechnya as the editor-in-chief of the Russian Chechen Information Agency, or my collaboration with Anna Politkovskaya, or Natalia Estemirova, or Memorial. So nothing like that. My problem lies in the attempt which I made on September the 1st, 2004, when the school in Beslan was taken hostage. And having possibilities to do what I had, and believe me, so until that day, I had never tried to ask for any comment from any person representing either side of the conflict, because I believe that we should stay neutral, we should just report the facts, which we did as the information agency, no matter whether it were good news or bad news coming from the area. But on September the 1st, 2004, when the school in Beslan was taken hostage, I realized that if I wouldn't do anything to prevent the deaths, I would quit the job of a journalist and I would go back to my safe career of academician at the university. I was very much in for philology and Latin language, which I taught at the university. So it was the thing which made the crucial role in my future life, which I never regret. My organization was banned. Russian Federation walked out for 3 years from any human dimension meeting at the OEC every 2 minutes when I was given the floor. And I was calling it a game of a gnome, a dwarf comes, home lives. Then they stopped. The reason was that they realized that I had quite a backing. I had the backing of responsible Finland. And now I feel very important to tell what I'm doing in Ukraine. The things I'm trying to do for civilians there, they are of the same origin. I would never remain a journalist if I wouldn't try to save people's lives from their slaughter, on whatever side these people are. From their death hunger, from their home, from their cold homes. Now we have to collect money in Finland to send to buy coal and firewood for Ukrainians. And I started to tell it at the European Parliament already in December 2014. And one European parliamentarian from Germany, by the way, from the Greens, so she tried to stop me during my presentation at the European Parliament. And after that, she came up to the same person and told Oksana, I know you are telling the truth. So this is the problem. We have to be aware that this self-censorship depends on the political will and depends on our responsibility.
Danke für diese wichtige Ergänzung und auch spannend, dass wir vorhin in dem kurzen Disput zwischen Alina und Marco eine ganz wichtige Frage sozusagen berührt haben, die Frage, wie politisch damit umzugehen ist und nicht nur, also wir waren ganz schnell auf einer Regulierungsebene, man muss das regulieren. Da kommen wir vielleicht später nochmal zu, weil das, glaube ich, ein ganz wichtiger Punkt ist. Aber ich möchte an der Stelle auch nochmal Zoran in die Diskussion, in das Gespräch bringen mit einer Perspektive aus Serbien. Und FONET ist ja eigentlich eine ganz wichtige, unabhängige Nachrichtenagentur. Und Unabhängigkeit ist ja auch ein Wert, auch ein journalistischer Wert, vielleicht auch etwas, was einen Marktwert hat. Aber wie ist Ihre Arbeit bei der unabhängigen Nachrichtenagentur FONET, das Geschäftsmodell von FONET, wie ist das, unter welchem Einfluss, wie gehen Sie im Rahmen des Geschäftsmodells mit Desinformationskampagnen in Serbien um und auch nochmal vielleicht eine Erklärung, woher kommen die meisten Desinformationskampagnen in einem Land wie Serbien?
Hello, everybody. Well, I don't want to spoil this very delicate and emotional debate, but I'll try to give you a Serbian angle, which is, if we speak about fake news, misleading news, misinformation, a sui generis case, which means that that fake news and fake narratives are in fact ruling political project. Serbia is a country with roughly 7 million people and with over 2,000 media. I can't respond to the issues about free and open market competition since we don't have free and open market, and we don't have a competition in quality or in facts. We don't have competition in informations. We have a competition in misinformations. So I'll try to be a bit illustrative. First of all, journalists that are dealing with fake news, according to my deep belief, are not journalists. So I wouldn't use that word for the people that are dealing with fake news. In practice, it looks like this. Most influential media in Serbia are not serving the public interest. They are serving the interest of the political centers of power, be they in institutions, be they in corporative sector, be they in PR, be they within the spin doctor clubs. So if they are not serving the public interest, then they're not the media, they're the tool. They're the tool or to promote somebody's specific interest or to fight the political opponents. And I see, after 35 years in journalism and after not moving from Belgrade all that time and now living in the fifth state in my lifetime, and after being journalist in fourth state at the moment, I could tell you that in fact, if you have, there is a chain, I would dare to say. If you have a fake media owners, then if you have a fake editors, then you have a fake journalists, then you have a fake media. And when you have a fake media, then they produce a fake media content. And if they produce a fake media content, that means that you create a false perception of reality. And if you create a false perception of reality, then you're facing citizens with the false challenges and false choices. And then you put them in a position to make their decisions relying on false choices and false informations. And then that's how they can ruin, and they are ruining their lives, and they are facing consequences which now make the whole environment unbearable. If you speak about independent journalists and independent media, we are isolated. We are pushed on a margin. We are exposed to various kinds on a daily level of threats, pressures, intimidations, humiliations. We are barely surviving. I'm for years now a member of the local IREX board that runs the global survey about the media sustainability in 88 countries throughout the world. And if you follow that index in Serbia since Milosevic fall 18 years ago, you will find out that it's permanently going down with each year, and that in 2017, the media sustainability index for Serbia was the same as in last year of Milosevic rule. The scores range from 0 to 4, and the score for Serbia was 148. We belong to a group of countries that are considered to be part of the mixed system, which means we have laws, but the media are not sustainable. In 2014, Serbia adopted 3 new media laws that were considered as most modern one within the region, that were used as an example of a good practice. Those were public information law, electronic media law, and public service law. And that was a revolution, because Serbia decided to completely withdraw state ownership from the media and decided to stop direct budget subsidies to any media outlets, and instead opted for a so-called project co-financing of the media content that is in a public interest. What appeared with those 3 laws in practice? They've been heavily politically misused, which means that the process of privatization of state-owned media was under strong political control by the people from the ruling coalition and their tycoons. And so instead of, after 3 years, and Europe applauded to those laws, and media community in Serbia also applauded. Now we face a disaster. Instead of state-owned media, we have party-owned media. Instead of having protected public interest through this concept of project co-financing, we are facing that the public money is also now going to the media that are obedient and that are following the political interest of the ruling coalition and centers of power. So this whole story about misinformation and fake news is, in fact, in our case, in early stage. It's not so sophisticated as we saw in this presentation, and I think that at the end of the day, this is maybe the opportunity to say, since we are one of the countries within the region that is rushing to become an EU member state, you're all aware of the fact that the key problem we are facing is the problem between Serbia and Kosovo. And I must say that European Union is playing with double standards, which means that they are ready to turn the blind eye on the issues like rule of law, like issues human rights, minority rights, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, just in order to follow their own pragmatic interest in the region. Of course, we are aware that European Union is facing their own problems, and that EU today is not the EU 5 years ago, and nobody knows what will look like in 5 years from now. But maybe next year. So sometimes we people coming from the independent media community or NGOs that are also targeted as enemies, traitors, mercenaries, or whoever, we feel ourselves betrayed, because we are expected to promote values of the democratic society. We are those that are expected to promote the professional journalism based on facts. We are those that are supposed to protect one of the basic rights that is occasionally forgotten, and that is the right for truth. And on the other side, those that were pushing us to believe in those values are not behaving in that manner. So for the moment, the whole story looks to me pretty desperate. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Okay. Bevor wir vielleicht zum Schluss es schaffen, nochmal auf die Frage von Regulierung zu kommen, würde ich Ihnen auch gerne nochmal die Gelegenheit geben, direkt Fragen zu stellen an unsere Redner hier auf dem Podium. Und hier vorne ist gleich etwas.
My name is working. My name is Radomir Lecin. I am senior editor of Daily Danas and one of co-founders of the Daily. My question is directed to you personally. The other day we published large parts of the report of Reporters Without Frontiers about media situation in Serbia, which is, you said, the worst in the region, not among the worst, but the worst. To a large extent, I completely agree with that. But my question is, since I'm rather old, not to say experienced, do you think that organization like yours can do anything to influence such kind of a situation and to improve a situation for the better in the case of public interests, not of any political group or a political interest, but of citizens?
Ich will nicht zu viel Raum hier nehmen, weil ich eigentlich ja nur als Moderator hier angefragt wurde, aber vielleicht ganz kurz nur 2 Kommentare dazu und wir können das dann auch später gerne noch vertiefen. Also wenn wir nicht daran glauben würden, dann würden wir nicht so etwas veröffentlichen, ein Media Ownership Monitor. Das haben wir auch für Albanien veröffentlicht und in vielen anderen Ländern. Gerade diese Woche haben wir das für Tansania in einer ganz anderen Region veröffentlicht, wo wir die Verflechtung von Medien, Politik und Wirtschaft dokumentieren. Aber solche Berichte entfalten natürlich nur Wirkung, wenn wir die nicht einmal veröffentlichen, sondern sie in der politischen Arbeit einsetzen. Und ein Punkt, den wir immer wieder kritisieren, ist als Reporter ohne Grenzen, ist, wie die Europäische Union in Fortschrittsberichten argumentiert. Denn in Fortschrittsberichten, wenn wir bei Serbien bleiben, die jüngsten Fortschrittsberichte zu Serbien kritisieren wir bei Reporter ohne Grenzen deshalb sehr, weil sie dort sogar solche Ergebnisse von Reporter ohne Grenzen zum Media Ownership Monitor aufgreift. Aber ich glaube, in Serbien muss man ja ganz konkret über einzelne Personen wie Herrn Vučić als Präsidenten sprechen, der verantwortlich ist für viele Dinge. Und ich glaube, in vielen Fortschrittsberichten macht die EU, nimmt dort nicht ihre Verantwortung wahr. Und das versuchen wir, die EU zumindest auf politischer Ebene daran zu erinnern und da auch auf Lektionen aus Slowakei, Malta hinzuweisen, die, glaube ich, die Europäische Union lernen muss. Und wenn ich nicht an Veränderungen glauben würde, dann würden wir das nicht machen. Und wir versuchen in Brüssel und überall immer wieder zu erinnern, hier liegt das auf der Hand. Aber wir sind auch am Ende nur eine NGO, die das machen kann, die Probleme benennen kann, die Namen benennen kann, aber am Ende liegt es natürlich auch an serbischen Medien, an unserer serbischen Partnerorganisation, vielen, das aufzugreifen. Aber wir versuchen, konkret zu werden, dort, wo die Europäische Union unkonkret bleibt. Das ist das, was wir zumindest machen können.
Thank you. So I'll just tell you a couple of situations. Some information appears on social media or anywhere. One news portal...
Can you just briefly introduce
you? Sorry, my name is Goce Trpkovski. I'm from Birn, Macedonia.
Yeah.
So something appears on social media, let's say. There's one news outlet checks it. It's not true. They don't publish it. The other news outlet just publish it. It's straightforward. Then, just half an hour ago, somebody from the government denies it. The first news outlet doesn't have to publish anything because they didn't publish the information in the first place. The second publishes another information. No, that was not true. The government denied it. The second collected like 30,000 clicks on the first piece of news, and the second another 30,000 the second time when they published that the government denied the news. The result, the one media has 60,000 clicks from just that piece, and the other has 0, and then you need those clicks to sell ads. So my question would be, how do you assess the role of such opportunists in spreading of disinformation? Do you see it just as strategic communication, or this type of opportunism does a lot more damage? And how do you assess this damage? How much of the damage done by fake news at all can be attributed to these opportunists? Anybody who would like to comment?
Actually, for me, there is no doubt that fake news as such is just their capital punishment for journalism and for the truth. So this is the clear answer. But at the same time, I would like to draw attention a bit from the responsibility of opportunists with the social media to the responsibilities of journalists. So there have been already mentioned a number of examples when actually fake news were created, disseminated, and supported by mainstream media outlets. So it's also a case. And for instance, not long ago, with my experience in journalism since 2000, I would say 18 years. So I was shocked myself. Just a week ago, I was approached, in this case, by a Russian journalist working for their media outlet opposition, which is in opposition to Putin, critical of Putin. But nevertheless, so he asked me for a contact I had with some person who he wanted to interview, and he told her, I know how to trap him. Now, what do you mean by trapping him? No, for instance, it's possible to ask some specific questions, then to agree on the answers, but then to change their questions you ask so that the content becomes different. And come on, so what are you talking about? So how is it possible? So if you ask questions and the person answers these questions, so your answers should be exactly the same as you put them. And no, this is the way how to make the interesting stuff. And I just refused putting him in contact with the person he would like to interview this way. So it doesn't necessarily refer to social networks or opportunism as such. This is unfortunately journalism, the way we have to deal now.
Thank you very much. I'm Pierpaolo Garofalo. I'm working in Italy. First of all, I would like to thank Oksana to remember us that fake news came from every side. And it's very sad, maybe, but I have to tell you that after so many years as war correspondent, I believe now only in my eyes. What I can control in 200 meters around me, because 1 kilometer is just too far, and after that it's impossible. Say this, I would like to address Colonel Chamberlain about, I think that in front of our colleagues, it would be very useful if you can make a very short explanation about the difference in the NATO doctrine from PSYOPs and INFOPs in one side and public information in the other side, because as far as I understand, I don't know till now if the Stratcom is dealing with with the info and PSYOPs or public information. Personally speaking, I don't think that the Russian Putin are completely evil and the NATO is an angel. So I know that the info-ops, the NATO info-ops doctrine include the use of fake news. So I think that from an official source of information, it's very important that you can assess the difference between the PSYOPs and info branch and the public information and the type of news used by the two different fields of operation. Thank you.
Eine direkte Frage an Eric, nochmal zum Verständnis, auch wo die Informationen herkommen, nicht? Achso, sorry, you didn't have to, sorry. So, will you answer?
Yes. So just to bring a bit of context, my trade per se is public affairs. So I have done 20 years of public affairs myself in Canada, and I've been deployed in Afghanistan and Bosnia-Herzegovina also. Your question is actually very relevant, but so you have to understand that right now I'm not speaking as a NATO member, I'm speaking as a representative of the Stratcom Center. We are accredited, but we're independent in some way. But basically, the public information that we distribute is always based on truth and on facts. There is a doctrine, like you said, about the information operations and then PSYOPs. This is basically information that will be loosely attributed, but it will not be fake news. So we don't deal in that dark side, as I would say. It's basically, it's easy to understand. We represent democracies. All the members of the Alliance are democracies, and they are based on the values of the citizens of those democracies. So first of all, when we talk about public information, we'll give you the best information we can at the moment. The information operations and the PSYOPs, as you may want to call it, are used for the enemy, but they are pretty much what people would refer as marketing. So basically, that's the difference between the different branches. But in strategic communications, basically what we're trying to achieve is to make sure that everything we do will inform and will speak. And that basically our diplomatic approach and our policies are in line with our military actions, and that everything is distributing a message that will inform people. So that's basically what we're trying to do. So obviously there's always people that will discuss this and will say, well, it's not true, etc. But I can tell you, based on my 20 years, I always provided information that I could attribute and that was factual and that was timely. And this is actually based on the regulations that I'm obliged to use as part of Canada and as part of a democratic country. So this is how I approach the thing. Now, obviously, everybody can have their own opinions, but I can tell you, based on the values of the countries that we represent, this is what we're allowed to do. And what we're allowed to do is to use facts, all the facts that we can, and at the moment where it's the most appropriate to deliver it. And that other aspect that you were talking about was other tools that could be used against the foe or the enemy or the other factions.
Dann habe ich doch noch eine direkte Nachfrage, weil Sie gerade gesagt haben, die Aufgabe von NATO Stratcom ist ja, Informationen auch für politisches Handeln zu geben. Gibt es aus Ihrer Erfahrung bei NATO Stratcom eine politische Entscheidung in den vergangenen 1,5 Jahren, wo Sie bei NATO Stratcom gearbeitet haben, die ohne Informationen von NATO Stratcom vielleicht anders ausgefallen wäre? Wo Ihre Informationen einen entscheidenden Hinweis gegeben haben, dass eine politische Entscheidung so und nicht anders gefallen ist?
Well, I'm not sure I fully understand your question, but...
Die Frage, I frame it briefly in English, sorry. Do you see, from your perspective, from your experience at NATO Stratcom in the last 2 years, were there any political decision in the past, because you said that you provide information, that's your mission, was there any decision which would have been different without any information delivered by NATO Stratcom in the last 2 years?
Well, our organization directly doesn't do communication right now. We're doing research on the aspect of communication and how to best communicate depending of the situation and the crisis and stuff like that. So we don't actually, we're not a voice actually for NATO. If you're asking me that, we have to understand that NATO itself is a body of 29 countries. And when you put together in 29 countries and they have to make a decision, it's always based on compromise. And you have countries that are from this different shades of democracy, basically, from the right to the center to the left. And they have to get to a compromise. And I would say most of the time compromise are usually, a good way to make decisions. So our information is based on the information that we have to provide as NATO, basically.
Gibt es noch eine?
Well, let's not finish this this debate within the military context.
You're right.
Let's switch a bit to a civilian one and journalistic. I would dare to say that the digital era is not a friend of facts. The digital era is much more convenient for emotions and beliefs. And that the role of a journalist is to deal with this challenge, to defend facts in order to defend their own credibility. Because I think that more than ever, credibility of a journalist is at stake. And that is something that is going to make the distinction between journalists and other producers of news. Because today, because today everybody can be a source. And I'll finish with an anecdote. I have a very good friend of mine that is a carpenter. And we talked recently about the situation in journalism. And he told me, well, listen, Zoran, journalists once used to be at a high price. Now prices are on journalists. So I would like not to be ashamed, because I spent 35 years in a profession that at the end of the day earned anger and tremendous disbelief of a public. Then the whole thing I've been done through my life will be completely useless. Thank you.
Yes, and another very short example of how important and crucial journalism might be for making right decisions, not only in the matters of war and peace, but also in the more trivial matters of business, as we are here to deal with business as well. Just last week, we had visitors from Ukraine, guests, who came to Finland after they had visited Switzerland and Brussels, the European Parliament, a lawyer and a media worker, so to say, who was in prison for 2 years and 3 months in Ukraine. And among the people who they met in Helsinki, they were also people from the PR of one of the most influential Finnish company, which deals with energo-consuming technologies, innovations. So, and while giving their review of the situation in one particular region of Ukraine, which is Zhytomyr. So they mentioned this particular company being unaware that the person is in the audience. And all of a sudden, it resulted in the mutual interest from the company to get more information of the alleged misappropriation of the money the company invested into Zhytomyr region precisely. So right now, they are collaborating, and exchanging documents. And the Finnish standards are so high with combating corruption, so that any appeal to their company, to the lawyers of the company in the written form, collaborated with documents. So requires, so it puts the company into legal obligation for the state, to the people, to the taxpayers, to start investigation into the allegations.
Danke, Oksana, dafür für am Ende vielleicht auch ein kleines Lichtblickbeispiel, um zu zeigen, dass Journalismus am Ende auch im Umgang mit Falschnachrichten, Desinformationen am Ende auch eine gesellschaftliche Wirkung entfalten kann. Und da müssen wir, glaube ich, weiter dran anknüpfen. Und danke Ihnen allen hier auf dem Podium für die interessante Diskussion, für die Einblicke. Ich glaube, die Erwartung war nicht, dass wir heute die Antwort finden, die endgültige, wie man mit dem Phänomen umgehen muss. Wahrscheinlich gibt es die auch gar nicht, sondern wir müssen einfach lernen, damit umzugehen, journalistisch souverän umzugehen, aber auch schaffen, die Geschäftsmodelle sozusagen so weit immun zu machen, dass sie irgendwie überleben können, damit umgehen können. Und damit nochmal ganz herzlichen Dank an alle, und jetzt will ich nicht weiter mit Worten hier oben auf dem Podium Sie vom Essen abhalten und wahrscheinlich noch einmal an Hendrik. Und wir treffen uns um 14 Uhr hier wieder, um dann weiterzumachen in den zweiten Teil des Tages. Vielen Dank und guten Appetit.